like now we're up and running. Can you see us there? Hello, Anna. How you doing? Glad to have you in the chat. Howdy there, folks. Welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. We're so glad to have you with us. It is Wednesday, February the 15th, 2023. I'm coming to you live from the middle of the Iron Mountain here in Carter County, Tennessee, and I am gazing into my black scrying mirror and using the magic of technology to peer upon Tim's wonderful visage all the way through, space and time. He's come to us from across the valley, and probably could holler at Tim if I was a little, had a little bit bigger mouth than he'd hear me. We're probably, 5 miles separated, if that, from...
Probably less than that.
Probably less than that, yeah, from ridge to ridge, probably. Yeah, so we're pretty close. He just lives over on the other side of the valley from me. But with all this magic technology, consider our voices all the way around the world, ready to interact with you folks out there in the chat, wherever you may be. Go ahead and say hello to us. Tell us where you're at. We're going to be talking some local stories for our area here in Tennessee to start off with, but it's going to lead into a bigger picture. So I hope you'll stick with us. I think you'll enjoy it, and I think you'll be able to relate to some of the stuff we're talking about. And I hope that you'll be able to contribute to it and give us some of what you're seeing on the ground and what you think about what we're talking about here tonight. So without further ado, how's it going, Tim?
I can't complain.
All right. Well, good.
I can't complain because I just staying in my bubble.
Well, that's good.
What happened to a giant alien death ray land on the White House lawn today?
Yeah, this stuff's got me wondering what's next, Did
the mind fungus take over, and it turns out that all the countries are currently being invaded by the sea life because it took over the crabs, and there's billions of crabs, and there's no way in hell we can fight all them off.
Crab people. Taste like
wild?
crab, talk like people. Yeah, that would be wild.
I don't know. I think that might actually change things up and make war a little bit more fun. Because like right now, say Anywhere goes to war with Anywhere, we'd all be pretty mortified if they ate the dead of the losers, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if we went to war with crab people,
don't forget your crackers.
Years anyway.
Don't forget your crackers. And your butter. What's up, Joe? Y'all like seafood? Tim and I were talking about it before the show. Tim's not a fan of seafood.
I'm trying. I wish I was. It seems everybody else seems like they're enjoying it.
Well, I was telling Tim, we had a substitute teacher in my food and nutrition class back, 25 years ago or whatever it was that I was in high school. And I don't remember the regular teacher's name, but I remember the lady who came and the substitute taught for us for like a week or so. Her name was Mrs. Hoard, and she was from Boston. But she brought us some octopus and showed us how to cook it. And we fried that octopus, and it was delicious. And so Mrs. Hoard... I remember her a lot more than a regular teacher there, but I've liked seafood ever since, and it set a pretty high bar for seafood. This lady brought in octopuses. She brought like big bags of octopuses for us kids to cut up and, make the batter and deep fry and learn how to, recognize when it was done and all that good stuff. And man, it turned out good. And I'll tell you, there's very few places where I've had calamari that compares to what Mrs. Hoard showed us how to do. What's up, Spill? And she's awake. Joe says, let's go to war with rich people. No, that's not a good idea. They got all the guns. They got all the money. That's what it is. The rich people are going to war with us. Well, we'll get into that a little bit tonight. I'm so glad that you started us there, Tim, because we're going to bring it full circle on that, like we so often do unintentionally. Tim didn't know what I was planning for the show. I messaged him or called him on Skype like 20 minutes ago. And if any of y'all tried to jump in the Skype last week, I didn't realize it. So sorry about that. I don't know how to set it up for that, but I think maybe somebody clicked on one of our links to join the Skype when I was doing a live show, and maybe I just left it out there in the description of the video. Speaking of which, like this video, go down in the description. There's our Rumble channel there. If you haven't subscribed to the Rumble channel, go over there, watch last week's video. If you missed it, especially because we did secret societies the week before that, and before that we did antichrists. We've done all kinds of good stuff. And this past weekend we talked UFOs. We talked the oil. Is it a distraction from what? From the oil slick? From what else could it be a distraction from? Well, we just recently found out some new information about the pipelines over in Russia. We want to hit that before the end of the show, and we also want to hit on some of the things that have been going on here in America. So, starting off though, in Tennessee, I heard this on the radio today that there is the the Tri-Cities Pride show, or Tri-Cities Pride, what you call it, the Gay Pride Parade, right, Tim? Tri Pride.
I mean, I'm aware they exist.
You're aware they exist, right? Yeah.
I don't keep up with, when they are or anything.
That's pretty much what I meant. It is a thing, and it is a thing, and it's fairly popular.
I don't have anything inherently wrong with them. I don't like it when, I don't like anything. Like I remember one of the big arguments that was brought up against us when I was in the church that I grew up in was the people that were against the more religious type would say that they didn't like how they were indoctrinating the children. So they'd always say to us, it's a bad thing to get children involved in such a serious thing at such an age. It's like, I agree with that in almost every aspect. And it's like, that's the one part of like the LGBT community I think they need to start checking themselves on. It's like, y'all need to stop getting kids involved. It makes y'all look real, real bad.
Well, just like you can, you can indoctrinate a kid to believe in Santa Claus. It shows you right there that they're pretty susceptible. I mean, the idea that you can tell a kid, hey, there's a man who's going to bring you a present. He's going to come down the chimney and leave you a present there and fly away on some reindeer, and then we teach them a lot of other stuff at that age too. And so I'm just saying it's pretty easy either way, whether you want to indoctrinate them into the church or whether you want to indoctrinate them into some sort of other ideology, some secular ideology. They're pretty malleable at that time.
I guess I'm going to alter my view here just a little bit. I think it depends on degrees, because like you're obviously going to raise your kid in the church, right? And if, for example, there's like gay people around a child, that kid, you can't just pretend like there's not a gay person around that child. At some point, it has to be explained to them, for example. So I don't think that sort of thing should be sheltered. Like, I don't think that you could have like a gay pride parade and like some kids be walking with their parents. That's not what I'm saying. It just gets real weird. Like, you probably shouldn't be taking 6-year-olds to see the drama Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flame because it keeps having people be thrown into a fiery pit to scare the shit out of them. You know what I'm saying? I think that's where you draw the line. And the same thing with like the gay pride things. You probably shouldn't have a kid up there twerking on stage with a G-string. It's just really gross,
Yeah, I agree.
Making a kid gay does not make it not CP. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's a weird line they're drawing.
No, I'm absolutely with you there. Well, the Tri-Pride, they're talking about how they don't know if this thing's going to happen in Johnson City like they planned, because evidently there is a bill that just passed the Senate, and it is being called, now this is from the Tennessean. We got to remember the Tennessean is usually a pretty progressive paper here. But they say, I've got this linked in the description, I'm pretty sure. The Tennessee Senate passes bill on male and female impersonators amid drag show debate. And we go on down to hit a little bit of the specifics of it, but we also miss a lot of the specifics on it. The Tennessee Senate Republicans on Thursday passed a bill to clarify portions of the state's obscenity laws after controversies over public drag performances. Now, this classifies male and female as impersonators as adult cabaret performers and bans adult-oriented performances that are harmful to minors, as defined in Tennessee's obscenity law. Now, this passed 26-6 with all the Democrats opposing. Now, it's in the Tennessee State Senate, so it's passed that, so it's still got to go through the State House. But some interesting things about it, I thought, because what you were talking about earlier. No, I don't think that we should expose children to stripping and things like this. But do you think that if people want to take their children with them to an event in public that doesn't have any nudity or obscenity, do you think that's okay if that's what they want to do? Or do you think
doesn't have that? Is that what you just said?
That doesn't have that? Do you think that's all right if they have their parade and people want to bring their children to that, but there's not any stripping or obscenity? Do you think that's all right? Well, I guess it all depends on how you define obscenity, but I mean, no nudity, no simulated sex acts of any kind, something like that. Would you say that would be all right to take children to if that's what parents wanted to do?
Yeah, and I mean, I try to answer things with an example just because it doesn't make it so flat, so people know why I think that way.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it's perfectly fine. Like if you desexualize it and it's all about the identity and celebration or whatever, why would there be a problem? But you can do the same thing with churches, right? Uh, I don't have a problem with Veggie Tales. I don't have a problem with Bible Man and saying I don't have a problem with any of that stuff. But they showed us some pretty weird stuff. Like they probably you know how many times I saw Jesus get killed? You know what I'm saying? I know it's supposed to, but I mean, that's how many times, the number of times I watched a real reenactment of a guy die on a cross over and over again and seeing it from the time before I could read is probably a lot. So I think there's some lines that need to be drawn in all areas, is all I'm saying.
I was grinning because I was thinking of the Bill Hicks bit there when you were talking about that. So I got a text here from Solar Power, Electricity, and Electronics. He's not able to comment on our channel. He's watching the stream, and he sent me a message. So hello there, Solar Power. I'm sorry you can't get through on the chat. I don't know what's up with that. Um, we didn't block you or anything. I don't even know if we can do that without blocking you altogether on the show. So I don't know why that would be, brother. But
No,
appreciate you
remember,
tuning in.
remember I have two accounts by the exact same name, and I said the only reason I made the other one's because that one it's like there's something in the security things that will shut you out. I don't type correctly, and I guess it thinks I'm a bot or
Yeah.
something.
Well, usually
Because I
Solar
was
Power comes through.
comments, you were like, "No, it's really weird," and I was like, and I just commented the exact same thing with the other account, and it popped right up.
Hmm.
So, yeah, sometimes the site will. I don't know. YouTube's got a weird algorithm. I don't even pretend to understand it.
But
What's
they
up,
know
Wild Blood?
Solar Power. They know Solar Power is not a bot. He's got a pretty good sized account. He's got like
Well, why
thousands
don't
and
you just have
thousands of
him call in?
followers. What's that?
Why don't you just have him call in?
I'll have him call in.
Yeah, so once you just have him call in if he's got his own channel, we can talk about solar power. I don't know nothing about that one.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, he and I were talking about putting a video together, and it just hasn't worked out. We just had bad luck on making that happen. I'm gonna see here if I.
Even though he can't comment right now, he can get his material ready. I want to know about that. I can't remember the name of the gasoline. It's some kind of a thing that I was seeing there for a while where people were putting solar panels out, and then it was making some kind of bubbles in this tube or something like that. And then after a while, it made some kind of an explosive liquid. And I can't remember the name of it now, but it was like solar powered and water and all this stuff. So I could be very gullible and get hoodoo with some stupid videos. But it does seem like there's some not very powerful but free energy that's available that I think we could dabble in.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear about. Solar Power, I happen to know knows a lot about that. So, yeah, that would be a good show. Sorry, Solar Power, I just checked again, man, and you're not hidden from the chat. You're not blocked from the chat. I don't know what that's about. I'll try to get that figured out, brother. I appreciate you letting me know. Appreciate you watching. This, I do want to get back on this story though. The so-called drag show bill here in Tennessee. This is according to the Tennessean. They go to a few of the business owners here, and they give a little different perspective on it. And it talks about Representative Chris Todd, House Rep. He filed the bill there in the House following a controversy in Jackson over plans for a family-friendly drag show. And he characterized the drag show as child abuse, although he was unaware of what the show might contain. Now, that's editorialized by the Tennessean there. But if we go on down here to what the actual legislation is, and there's already, if it's signed into law right now, it would criminalize a first offense as a misdemeanor. A second would be a Class E felony, which would carry between 1 and 6 years in prison. Now, the Tennessean here goes on to say, they talked to Nashville business owner David Taylor, and he criticized the bill as unnecessary. Says he owns several businesses that host drag shows, which he says are already subject to aggressively enforced state liquor laws that ban nudity and simulated sex acts, and drag performers have never been considered adult entertainers under those laws. Well, I don't know about that, because you go to the strip club and you can, I don't know if some of them you can buy liquor and some of them you can bring it in, and yeah, they might have pasties on, but
I think the presence of kids makes all that stuff. Like I think what they're saying is they can't have you literally can't sell liquor at these events because there's kids there now.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of seems like it's what do you call that? A straw man, I guess, a bit, because they're talking to David Taylor, and he's talking about at his places where he has liquor licenses, he's not allowed to have these things. And well, I kind of doubt you're hosting these family friendly drag shows at places with liquor, where you're serving liquor. At least I hope you wouldn't be.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. To me, the idea of if a man wants to dress as a woman or whatever, that and perform a show. I've been to drag shows; they can be a lot of fun, but they're like cabaret or burlesque. They're kind of silly, but they're definitely sexual, and that's not to say that at least the ones I've seen are. Now, this kind of seems like they're avoiding that fact by saying, well, this is we already can't do that when there's liquor around, but they're not saying anything about that there's an existing law protecting children from that. Now, I think there should be, I don't think that children should be going into strip clubs either. Anywhere where you sexualize a child, that's kind of where I draw the line as far as, I'm not a statist at all, we'll say, but while we have the state, I will cheer on it protecting children. But is this an overreach, or is this protecting children? It's hard to say, because the whole culture war going on right now, you can't even really tell what is a real argument and what's a straw man argument, and what's in between. Where's the real truth on it?
it's not really my argument in there because I don't have kids and it's not really something I'm even involved in. But I thought it's funny because Anna says I'm in Wisconsin. It's not unusual seeing kids in restaurant bars with their parents. And I think that's funny because Cliff knows that our little bubble of purity here has only had alcohol for about a decade. So we're pretty far behind on seeing things.
Yeah, we had when Tim and I were growing up, we had a Pizza Hut that served draft beer, and that was the only place in town that you could get a beer for a really long time. There was the grocery store sold beer, of course, but do what?
You had to be a Moose Lodge member if you wanted to get a beer in Elizabeth.
Yep. That was about it. And then we got liquor by the drink, I don't know, 20 years ago, and then we had liquor stores about 10 years ago. I'm guessing on all this stuff, but
I'm bad with time.
yeah, me too. But yeah, all that stuff didn't end the county. I think it just has been going downhill, regardless of that, or separate from that. But let's move on from that one a little bit, because this one's kind of a little bit related, and this is in Nashville. This is House Speaker Cameron Sexton of the Tennessee State House. He's basically the leader of the House Republicans, and he has put in a bill that would block insurance companies that cover gender affirming care from contracting with TennCare. So I guess he doesn't reckon he has the authority, or doesn't want to try to do it by just outright banning it. He's going to use the power of the state's regulation to not allow companies that do what they call gender affirming care, including surgeries or mutilation for children. So, I'm all for that, saying we're not going to use the Tennessee state funds to permanently alter the body of a child in an elective procedure, whether it's a nose job or whether it's what they call top or bottom surgery. I'm not for using state funds to do that for any children, especially when they're below the age of consent. They're not allowed to make legally binding decisions. Why would you allow them to permanently alter their body with surgery and hormone therapy and all this stuff when we won't let them vote? We won't let them. You can't even drive until you're 16. You can't even fully drive until you're 18. We have a graduated license system here in Tennessee where you basically have a real restricted license up until you're 18. So
I can get their argument. It's just not my argument.
Oh, let's hear it.
Their main argument is because time is an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you can get things adjusted before like major puberty things happen,
yeah,
it vastly changes the outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no doctorates. I've been part of
Well,
no studies.
that is their argument is they want to start them young.
You
That's why
know,
they call it puberty blockers because they want to start it young before any of those hormones have a chance to take hold. But uh, the fact is, you're, that child is not going to actually develop as a female because if you've given a male child, you know, a hormone blocker and started giving it estrogen, it's not actually going to develop as a female. It's going to develop as an underdeveloped male. And you know, even
I
if
think the
that,
whole point, the sooner you start, the more,
the more feminine you'll appear.
yeah,
But at the
that's
end, you're
their
still,
argument.
and at the end though, it's still going to just be an underdeveloped male. You're stopping that child from having, having the hormone that it needs to fully develop in the way that it
Okay,
was,
yeah,
its
but
DNA designed it to develop.
playing devil's advocate, uh, you're arguing semantics, I think, because you're saying it's just an underdeveloped male. But to someone who really believes in their head, even that they are a female, the more female that they could look would probably be, priceless to them.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that,
That's
and
once again, that's me playing devil's advocate. I
yeah,
listen to both sides. I
no,
don't
I
have
understand.
kids.
I understand where you're that's one of their arguments. Um, but again, there's you don't have the agency to do such a thing as a child, and should the parent be able to make that decision for that child, parents can make a lot of permanent decisions for children, like whether or not to get braces or something like that. But in many of these cases, these parents are being told, "Oh, your child's going to kill themselves if you don't give them this treatment, this surgery, or this hormone therapy, or whatever it may be." So a lot of parents are scared into doing it, and they yeah. What's that?
Sorry, I was reading in the chat.
Oh, oh,
Uh,
we missed a bunch here, haven't we?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and read them out. Sorry.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Anna says she was so surprised in Clarksville that it was a dry county. She thought it was a joke. Yeah, there's a real thing. What's up with the north? There's more bars and churches down south. Y'all have a dry counties? That's strange. Yes, it is. It is a little strange. We got more churches than bars by far. And Spiel says she couldn't even, uh, couldn't do anything without consent. Now they do it all behind parents' backs. Well, a lot of parents give consent for it. But there was a lady in the news. She let her 6-year-old get a tattoo, and she was arrested for that. Well, and it was, why would she be arrested for that? That tattoo might make that child feel better, and the earlier that child can get it, the better. That child might really feel like a tattooed individual, and that tattoo is part of that child's identity. Huh?
If you're going to argue that tattoo has something to do with, male or female, that maybe. Don't you think what you said earlier is the way it's supposed to be, though? Like, it's not that we're not supposed to break the rules when we're younger and mess up and learn. Uh, but, I mean, aren't you supposed to do it without permission? And aren't you supposed to get in trouble so you learn and you get a little wild oats sown or whatever they want to call it? And
Yeah.
like, your parents aren't supposed to be like,
You're supposed to learn your parents are right and learn a lesson from it and say, oh, well, they knew what they were talking about after all.
yeah, it's like you're supposed to realize that the person that's usually right isn't usually the cool person in the room, and it's okay that your parents are, squares or nerds or whatever word you want to use for it in common day.
Yeah.
Like, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. And in fact, you're going to be just like them one day probably, and that's supposed to be this cycle of life that we're skipping, where everybody's trying to be their kid's best friend, or now not
Yeah.
even doing that. Everybody's twerking on TikTok while their kid's sitting there by themselves with an iPhone. I mean, I don't even know what that's going to do.
Well, I think maybe some people have, so many people are stuck in trying to relive their childhood or reliving their glory days, and I wonder how many of them, just like you have Munchausen by proxy, where some women will, I guess it's mostly women that I've heard of, Munchausen by proxy. Munchausen's is where you would fake an illness to get attention, and you may not even know that you're faking the illness. And Munchausen by proxy is where you fake an illness for someone else, like your child, in order to gain attention from that. And again, you may not even know that you're faking it, because it is part of a mental illness. So
It can be delusional.
yeah.
There is a subconscious and conscious level to it. And then again, there's people that are just full of shit too, that just want that sympathy.
Well, I think there's a combination of that and a social, basically a social, what would you even call it? A social contagion, I guess you would call it. Because people see that the attention normally for something years ago that people would shun you for, like if you were growing up when we were a kid, people would shun you if you had a child that dressed in as the opposite gender and wanted to go by the name of the opposite gender. But today, it's almost like the exact opposite. You're celebrated for that. So you're brave and you're strong and courageous. Well, everybody wants to be brave and strong and courageous. So, and look how special you feel when your kid is the one. Well, we just, we love him anyway, and we just love him, and love is love, and we're going to do what we have to do to make sure that our child is comfortable. And so I think part of it is finding acceptance and finding being celebrated, I guess. And then there's the mental illness side of it, and it's kind of all rolled into one, I think. And then somewhere in there you have the people who genuinely have something, whether it's gender dysmorphia or dysphoria, or body dysmorphia. So it's a similar thing. You maybe feel like part of your body doesn't belong. So some people want to, I don't know, chop off their pinky or chop off their toe or chop off their arm, and that's considered a mental illness, and we try to break that delusion from them because it could be harmful. But I feel like it's a similar thing with gender dysphoria. But generally speaking, people with gender dysphoria live. I'm sorry.
I said I have a pretty interesting note on the people that feel like they need to like cut their hand off or something.
Yeah.
But go ahead and finish your thought.
I was just going to say, people with gender dysphoria they've lived among us for a long time, and you probably didn't know a lot of them. Every now and then you might see, one that really stands out. But I think we've talked about it before, Tim. It's almost just like the fetish of dressing in women's clothes has gone mainline, and people are celebrating the fetish more than they are an actual identity. But that could just be my misguided perception. Go ahead with your story.
You know what phantom limb pain is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, real brief synopsis for anybody that might not know that sees this. You lose an arm, but the feel stuff, the neurons in your brain that make you feel things are all across the top. It's like what they call tonotopically, or that's about around the top of the brain. And even just because your hand's gone, the part of your brain that is still wired to that hand, it's still there, and it still thinks the hand's there. So every now and then it'll test it. And if people, they don't really know the mechanism behind it. A lot of people, they think maybe people give in to the sensation too much when the hand tests itself, like they get too focused on it. You can actually get the sensation that you're moving it until one day the brain tries to figure out what the hell's going on, and it makes a permanent fist, and that's when it starts becoming painful. Now, skip to the end where they figured out the most successful way to make phantom limb pain go away was to put them in a device that had a mirror on one side, like a trick. You put your hand in here, you put your stub up here, and you do this essentially, and you visualize the right hand letting go, and then the left hand thinks it's doing that because it sees it, and the brain is up top that your hands let go, so it lets go too. Now over time that'll take back over, right? It'll switch that piece of brain and give up real estate to other things surrounding it. But they actually started to think that there's something wrong with people's brains. Like when people start wanting to lose their arm, like they don't really know the mechanism behind it, but I actually think it's some kind of physical damage up in the brain where like that part of the brain is trying to work its way out. It's almost like it's trying to get the host to cut it off because it's out of room or something.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really wild theory because they still really don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, and I don't think it's who am I to say what people really feel on the inside? But some things we determine are mental health, and some things we decide, are acceptable and well, and whatever. My whole thing is, if it's anything sexual, children shouldn't be exposed to it, and if it is something that permanently alters the body of a child for something that isn't life-threatening, then I'm okay with the state of Tennessee using its regulatory power to not do business with companies that do it through TennCare. So they're not even saying you can't do that to your child if you want to pay for it, I guess. So rich people can still do it. As always, the laws very rarely affect the rich people. But let's move on from that, because that kind of spreads out into, you'll see how this ties together when we wrap the episode up. But we talked about the big, all the weather balloons and the quote unquote UFO distraction, quote unquote UFOs. I'm pretty sure they probably know exactly what these things are, and you're using it literally as a distraction for something. What could it be? There's so many things going on. What are they trying to distract us from exactly? Because we've heard that the Epstein list could be unsealed. That came out over the weekend. We saw that Seymour Hersh wrote, and this guy is not a guy to, he's a distinguished liberal journalist from way back, and he's not a guy to mess around, and he gives like direct sources and direct quotes and things in his piece on Substack, where he says that the U.S. Navy was actually responsible for the sabotaging of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines over in Russia. Are they trying to distract us from that? Or are they trying to distract us from, new Hunter Biden stuff? Are they trying to distract us from this? We remember we talked about last week the food processing plants. I got this story here. This makes me remember last week I was telling you that I'd looked it up, and it said, well, we're normal for food processing. Well, this headline here from NFPA.org for National Fire Protection Association. Guess what their headline is? Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Oh, well, that makes me always think that there's something to see here. Isn't that what the cop always says when there's something to see here and people start gathering around trying to look and see what it is? Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. Well, you go on down and they make some claims like, fires are not a rare occurrence. We had 490,000 structural fires in 2020 in the U.S., and we see a lot of fires every year. Okay, that's all over the whole country in every structure. And we go on down here, and he says in 2019, the number of fires at all manufacturing or processing plants in the country topped 5,300. Now, get this, nearly 15 a day. Now, why did they include all manufacturing or processing plants, not food, when they give you that high number of how many fires there are? And then they say more than 2,000 fires occurred in agricultural, grain, and livestock, and refrigerated storage facilities, which could all include food processing operations. Now, you do have grain and combustible dust. Yeah, it's not out of the ordinary that you would have fires there. But the fact that this one was on in May of 2022, they had several of these fires happen at the time, and they don't give us a number, versus of what happens normally each year versus food processing. They try to tie the numbers in there with other processing and manufacturing. I find that suspicious, because this is a bunch of like poultry farms and stuff that are burning. This is chicken processing, meat processing. This is not a grain silo exploding, which I can understand would be perfectly common. But
I think there would still be things that would blow up in those other ones.
Well, sure, but I'm not saying it's not possible that they can have fire, but I do think it's awfully odd that they don't give us any specific information on those types of facilities. They lump them in with ones like, grain facilities, which would be obvious that they would have a lot of those. But, then they go on to include them in an even larger number, including all production manufacturing facilities in the country. So anyway, it's a lot of that going on. Let's go on to, we saw the train going over in Ohio, spilling the toxic vinyl chloride everywhere, being burned to create phosgene gas and hydrochloric acid, and they say that's a better than having the straight vinyl chloride explode and go everywhere or run into the waters. Well, it's supposedly contaminated the Tennessee River watershed and the Ohio River watershed and hundreds of miles around it. So we'll just have to see what happens from that. But then we got this down in Arizona. This is from Citizens Free Press. Look at this. This truck has turned over. They had to close the highway. Now that looks toxic, doesn't it? It looks like bad news. Looks like the beginning of The Stand almost, except it's more visible. So down in Arizona, this is from USA Today. We got hazardous material in Tucson, Arizona, shutting down the highway. Nitric acid spilled after the truck crashed. We've got down in No, they did a shelter-in-place order and had a 1 mile perimeter, so that's not a real big area there, but noteworthy because we're going to go on to another one here. This is from the Frisch report. I think I just accidentally closed one I meant to keep open. This is from the Frisch report down in Huntsville, Alabama. No survivors in the military helicopter crash near Huntsville, Alabama. They deleted one of the angles here. I guess maybe it was too up close. It was still pretty far away. But yeah, the whole crew died there. There's security footage here. Let's see if it'll show this. It's pretty far away. No, it's all gone. They've scrubbed the internet from it. Because this was all showing up earlier today. But, for out of respect for their families, I don't have any problem with them pulling those down as long as they're able to be seen after the survivors have been, or the family's been notified and everything. But what I'm getting around to, there's a whole lot of shit going around all over the place. What you could maybe even call sabotage in a lot of different areas of the country. Tim, what were you telling me about your theory that you texted me about earlier today? Elaborate on that for just a minute.
Well, I don't really pay too much attention, but everybody's talking about the big black death cloud. So seems to me that would be the distraction, since everybody's talking about the big black death cloud. I know the original narrative was, they're trying to talk about, so they're trying to get you to talk about UFOs. No one's talking about the big black cloud of death. It's on Facebook.
Everybody's talking about it on social media now.
That's what I'm saying. If it's on Facebook and stuff like that, that's probably the distraction, wouldn't you say? If I'm just using a little Occam's razor. Yep. But if I want to use my crazy bone, little John Prine, a little crazy bone, I want to say, part one, maybe they're trying to smoke out the aliens. Puff, puff, get them up in there. But what if they're trying to poison the jet stream? That was the other one. Because I know people are saying, Ohio, it's going to rain all that shit down. It's like, yes. But that jet stream goes right through that area. And a lot of that stuff, if you look at the map, usually ends in Greenland and Eastern Europe and places like that. All the people that are making laws to have their own citizens die anyway. So I really don't think they care if the plebs get cancer there.
Maybe they're making it swing down to go through Russia or something.
Well, it does. Like if you look at the jet stream, they call it the ribbon of current or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that stuff goes up there, and it won't come back down until it's almost over there anyway. By
That's
that point,
what I'm saying.
It's
Maybe they're feeding that stuff into the atmosphere to hit Russia with it from all the way over here. I mean, you can calculate the trajectory of a planet. Of a rocket around the moon and to a planet, so you would theoretically be able to somewhat calculate the jet stream.
Well, they say like all that stuff that comes from China hits California, and it's because of the currents of the ocean, and because that's the flow of the jet stream. That's the way it goes. It dips down right into California because of the cold air up in Seattle and places, right?
Yep.
You've heard the news talk about that for years. So they don't ever talk about where our jet stream goes. And it just so happens the one that flows over the top of Ohio goes right into Greenland.
That's true.
Just it's a little fishy, isn't it?
Or
it's the final ingredient for Project Bluebeam. It's not really the toxic stuff. It's just some kind of a reflective thing they got to cook up in there. That way, when the aliens come, they'll have something to reflect.
Those will be the particles that vibrate that they use with the sound waves. Yeah, could be. I kind of feel like they've been putting that in the air for a while with the stratospheric aerosol injections with the aluminum and barium that's been put out into the skies, but that's supposedly for geomodification. But let me read you a definition here, Tim.
Okay.
This is from
I would like to say, and then I'll shut up and let you have your time here.
Okay.
It is completely possible that a bunch of dum-dums in Ohio went, we should just blow it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now, don't forget, they did, remember that you've seen the video of them blowing up that whale, right? Where the whale washed up on the beach and died. And they just had the bright idea they were going to...
Keep in mind, this is the exact same state that set the river on fire because there were too many chemicals in it at one point.
Yeah.
Or did it just set fire because... But either way, the river was so full of chemicals that the whole thing just caught fire for like days.
Well, let me read this. Let me read this with that in mind, though. I mean, let's read this. This is the definition for fifth generation warfare from Wikipedia. Fifth generation warfare, or 5GW, is warfare that is conducted primarily through non-kinetic military action, such as social engineering, misinformation, cyber attacks, along with emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and fully autonomous systems. Fifth generation warfare has been described by Daniel Abbott as a war of information and perception. There's no widely agreed upon definition of fifth generation warfare. But let's go down here to Robert Steele, who first used the term in 2003, and here we go. In 2008, okay, oh wait a minute. Okay, in 2008, the term was used by Terry Tariff, who presented the 2003 Ricin letters as an example, but stated he was not entirely sure if it was a fifth generation attack, claiming we may recognize it as it resolves around us. We might look at several alternative futures and see each as fifth generation. And he said that it allows super empowered individuals to make political statements through terrorism. They lack the political power to actually have their demands met. Now, let me go down here to characteristics real quick. Alex P. Schmidt said that fifth generation warfare is typified by its omnipresent battlefield and the fact that people engaged in it do not necessarily use military force, instead employing a mixture of kinetic and non-kinetic force. Now, he said it correlated and it agrees in political, economic, and technological violence, which they believe could be more devastating than a conventional war. So social programming, brainwashing, misinformation, preemptive programming, maybe it's just a coincidence, but look at White Noise was a big movie for Netflix that they were really pushing back in 2022, roughly 6 months before this train thing. A lot of the ideas that we saw with the pandemic, the show Utopia, was about a worldwide pandemic that had been manufactured and created in order to try to get humanity to take a vaccine that would basically make them more malleable and controllable and bring them into the control grid. Now that was called Utopia, and it came out right before, I think it came out in 2019, and then it was pulled. And there were shows like movies like V for Vendetta that had a very similar plot point. And you also see when intelligence agencies in other countries did operations such as CIA in places like Panama, Iran, all over the Middle East, all over South America and Central America, they would attack infrastructure. They'd blow up a school bus, or not a school bus, but like a bus with lunches for children at school. And they would put cement in the milk. They would shut down communications. And then every time they would do this, they would do things like throw flyers up for the person that they were trying to oust. So they sowed social discord without having to bring in a big army, and they let the people, they would basically let the social movements happen, and the people would make the changes that they wanted them to make for them. And a lot of people have argued that that's what a lot of the social movements in the 60s were about. These were all changes, basically, however you feel about these laws, if they were beneficial to disabled and people of different races. Ultimately, the point was it gave the government the power that it never had before, and convinced people that it was the right thing to do to give it this power. And I think a lot of this could even be seen as fifth generation warfare if you're looking at it from the perspective, like Joe said early in the show, of the rich against us. And the rich against us, they've gotten where they want to be. They've gotten to where they are, and now they want to pull up the ladder behind them so none of the rest of us can climb into the boat. They don't like competition. John D. Rockefeller famously said competition is a sin. And what he meant by that is that this is a whole lot better if we're not cutting each other's throat. We that are already rich are not cutting each other's throat to be the top, but we all kind of work together to keep anybody new from getting in here. You know, we write regulations that, well, we have to follow these important regulations to protect everybody, but realistically, it makes the burden of entry so high that nobody else can afford to get into the game with them. So, all this being, a long rambling conclusion here, that a lot of the things that we are experiencing right now, it could all be distractions from things, or it could all be part of something even bigger. but there's a lot going on out there, and it's hard to know what to keep track of. And especially when these events like this are happening all over, these, you know, disasters are happening all over the country. And it's a big country, though. Is it just, you know, is it just we focus on the worst things? I don't know, but it certainly does all seem to fit together. And
Maybe.
I'm willing to be paranoid.
Y'all ever think like that though?
Huh?
Because I can't help it. That's where my mind is right now, to actually think like that. And since we got a few people here, does anybody else just think like maybe we'd be happier if we didn't pay attention? It's not
Well,
like
yeah,
can stop
oh yeah, I've definitely thought that, and we definitely would be. We would be until it was too late, you know, because all these political movements that happen are pushing us in the direction of having less freedom and more dependence on government and less ability to climb the social ladder, I guess, as it were, economically speaking. They really are shutting the trap doors behind them. They're pulling the ladders up behind them. So I feel like we have to point it out, and at least, like I've said before, these people are already in a lot of positions of power. So you may not be able to affect it in many ways, but on the local level you can, and your dollar and the way that you live your life is ultimately the best defense against any of it. But at the same time, we have children that have to grow up in the world, and I don't feel comfortable saying, well, you know, it's all right now. I really, realistically, I live in the most free time in the world. It's just that it's getting ready to close in, and everything is being put in place for it to close in. We just saw it all during the COVID lockdowns. They have this shit ready to pounce on us, and if we don't stand up for it and stop it from happening on our local levels and places where we do have the power, it is going to clamp down on our children and on future generations. So yeah, it would definitely be easier to just ignore it and not pay attention to it. I feel like somebody has to watch it and at least try to put the pieces together.
What you think? Well, it's my role here, so I have to say it. But like, it's very popular to do this now, though. You know what I mean? Like, because this is what I see, and what I guess kind of concerns me is
Right.
typically what happens is it's like almost all of society is almost exactly like music. Like music scenes start out with a smaller group of people that are into a certain thing, and then at some point that becomes popular, bigger group of people comes in, and then all of a sudden one day it goes mainstream and it gets watered down and gets turned into something that's almost a shadow of what the original intent of it was. Happens every single time.
And
It's
that's
ironic.
that is happening here too, because we're so watered down by what we're allowed to say on YouTube. We don't even touch some of the stuff that used to be on YouTube. But go
I was
ahead,
actually
sorry.
going to go the other direction with it and say that what's going to happen when we become such doomers that we have a great society, but we're all hateful assholes and none of us actually want to live.
Well, I don't think that's happening at all. Well, I mean, well, for some people it is. I'm not a hateful asshole, and I don't let it ruin my day.
Weird as shit, dude.
Do I?
It used to be like whenever whoever was not in office was the one that was happy.
Yeah.
Like, like Democrats are like moonwalk playing like saxophones the whole time Clinton was in office, and Barack Obama, they were break dancing and learning new dance moves.
Yeah.
And Republicans are always arrogant too during their celebratory years, especially with Trump. But nobody's happy right now.
Yeah.
And so like nobody's really happy that about Biden or anything like that. So I'm wondering so what everybody's turning to is conspiracy theories and alternative news, and I just wonder what happens when the entire world, because I'm used to being like the dude that would listen to Coast AM, and that was a little bit weird. No, not everybody did that, right?
Yeah.
It's usually just the weird ass dudes that was on Night Stock with me, and that was it. But now everybody knows about different conspiracies and Epstein and the big black smoke of death, and that kind of concerns me. To have the entire population trying to be watchdogs is scary, because I doesn't
Mm.
not everybody can has the ability to process that, or the even mental fortitude to take in the fact that the world's just an awful, scary place all the time. We just don't talk about it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap it up. I think I said what I thought about it, and then I think you make some very good points there too. But
I'm not sure what I just made. I'm just
well,
looking at
no,
the future. What
yeah,
it's going to
no,
be like.
I,
Everybody's focusing on who's behind the curtain all the time, you know? Because I
well,
know we're doing it right now, but picturing like 15 years when it's just completely normal for everybody to be sitting here talking about who did what, where, and when, you know?
well, then it'll be a lot harder for shady politicians to get away with stuff. So, I would say that that would be good.
It's like
But
complete communal, down to a community level fascism at that point, where people are telling on each other for doing neighborhood watch crimes, you know?
yeah, now I see what you mean.
Green Day finally gets their new wave of paranoia. Billy Joel, you were wrong about what office administration it'd fall under.
All right, let's see. Spill says, "Heck yeah, that looks toxic." Talking about the spill there in Arizona, it was not
It's pretty neat.
hydrochloric acid, but shoot, I already forgot what it was. I said what it was earlier. It's linked in the description, the USA Today article. Um, but yeah, Spill says everyone growing their own food. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, because you're growing your own food, and then you got that toxic cloud up there. And Spill says, yes, they're talking about the aerosols, always in your face and your cray, but call it out in your cray cray. Yep. And now they're still calling us crazy though, so I don't know if there's any danger of that anytime soon, Tim. I think
No,
more.
I'm not worried about them. I'm used to being called crazy, and I mean being flat out honest. I mean I am. I'm not just into the like. I laugh at the conspiracy stuff because some of it is true and some of it's not. I'm not crazy because I'm into conspiracy. It's synonymous that I'm also into conspiracies and stuff. My worry is that people who are, I don't know, even self-honest, because I mean, it's not like me, you, and Golf sitting in the same room or just a picture of sanity. You know, we're functional, but we all got our weird little quirks that make us who we are. You know,
Especially
and that's
golf.
mostly the people. That is mostly the people that were into Coast to Coast and all the you know the aliens and the Bigfoot and the Illuminati or whatever. You know, spill about everybody in this chat's probably the same group of people.
Yeah.
But what happens when that group of people who also have a level of discernment about it, all of a sudden everybody, just every single person out there is suddenly into that. That's what I'm worried about. Because I don't know how they interpret it. Is that like
Yeah.
where is that like, I don't want to sound this like derogatory in case anybody's listening. Is that like where like, I don't know, like flat earthers come from, or like where they just, it's too much and you get sucked in too far. You get sucked in further than you should.
I don't know. Um, I guess about I'm reminded with the people, you're talking about having like a local neighborhood fascism. And I think if it's for, people watching the government, I don't think it's a bad thing. In the original form, the United States government was supposed to be, it was supposed to be different to liberty, and it was supposed to be a position that not many people would really want, because, it was a necessary but evil function, but with all the power that comes through it, people tend to rise to it. So I like the idea of it being open enough to where, if somebody does want to come in there and use that power to bad ends, they've got a lot of eyes on them, and people are open to things like realizing that there's neuro-linguistic programming and social programming and all these different campaigns being run against our brains. As to quote Alex Jones, there really is a war on for your mind from a lot of different angles. There's a lot of people warring, a lot of groups warring for your mind. But Spill, we feel at home with you in here too, and I'm glad you feel that way. And we will get we will get this daggone this call-in system set up soon, especially so we can have folks like Solar Power
Gotcha.
call in.
And just plug up. You one of them phone numbers you need to use in case you need to order that crack cocaine or a booty call and you don't want anybody to know about it.
All right. Well, I don't know nothing about that live, Tim, but it's good to have you on my team. But hey, listen,
Sure.
Spill, Sean, I think it was Sean.
Oh, your booty
jumped in
call
again.
Cliff Curry. And I've seen that
Joe was in
countless
there.
next year prepper rack.
Everybody in the chat, we appreciate y'all. Definitely go back and like the video if you didn't already, and we will see you on Sunday. We're going to talk Satanic Panic then and now with Wilbur the Killed. So thank you so much. We will see you then. Have a good week and a good weekend. Later.